Councilman Goldman has left. Yeah, Marta, would you call the roll again at this point for those present, just so that we can have for the record that these are the people who heard this case last month? Last month.
Good evening, Commissioners. Just to make sure that all of us, refresh our memories and recollections regarding the application. We're here. I believe this is the second time that we really have we'll be putting testimony in. First time there was a little blip from my side. We're here to try and get the approvals for an LED sign on Morris Avenue. Last time that we were here, I believe that the testimony that was heard by this board, I think it certainly educated me, and I think that as the city struggles or perhaps is evolving into newer things, newer technology, I think that the testimony of the lady, Judy Dennis, from the manufacturer of the LED sign, I think was quite remarkable and to me, very informative. So let me remind you that the testimony was that this sign is a graduated sign to go from very, very low voltage or very low brightness to a very high brightness. And for the most part, the low brightness is in the evenings because there's very little need for any brightness in the evening. The sign basically runs very well. It also is very flexible. It can be programmed to many, many degrees. So I just want to make sure. And then at that time, we also passed some information regarding the sign. After the last meeting and the issue of perhaps the aesthetics of the sign and the impact that it may have on the surrounding properties, my client and I met with Victor Vinegger. And at Victor Vinegger's suggestion, my client made arrangements to have a sign the same size as the projected LED signs placed on top of the building in the same location that is being planned, and to a substantial expense of my client's part. And I know that the chairman was at the location. I do not know if any of the other commissioners were able to make it that day, which is past Tuesday. But we were able to take some photographs, and I would like to show them to you. But before, I believe that my client is to be sworn in.
You previously sworn qualified, sir? Okay. Victor, you previously sworn qualified? Yes, sir. Okay.
So let me just enunciate the pictures. Mr. Lugo, I showed you a picture which I had marked page 6. Did you take that picture? Yes. Was that picture half of this sign put up the building, is that correct?
Correct.
And that was on last Thursday? I'm sorry, last Tuesday?
Tuesday.
And the sign was up from approximately what time to what time?
11 a.m. to 6 p.m.
And again, I asked you again, is that sign basically the same size, same location, and as the plan sign?
Yes, it is.
And I have no further questions for my client. I do have two experts, one planner and another one traffic consultant to address your concerns. But I would like any concerns with the signs or any commissioners? Are there any questions, Mr. Lugo?
Well, this is a sign that it's not the LED display. It's just that to give us an idea of the size and the perspective. All right.
Any other questions, comments?
If there were two pictures, they said, but I think both of them are basically very, very similar. If you go look at A7, I think it was 7 with the field like the same thing. I'll have Mr. Steyer.
Would you raise your right hand, please? You solemnly swear the testimony you're giving
Yes, sir.
will be the truth and the whole truth.
Joseph Steiger, Steigar, 17 Tremont Drive, East Hanover, New Jersey.
Mr. Steiger, could you?
You raised me qualified.
I was about to.
Mr. Steiger is a recognized expert in his field and has been here many times.
Mr. Steiger, at the request of our clients, you made a study of the location of the sign as well as the potential impact on traffic flow, etc. Could you expand on your study and what the study showed?
Yes, the purpose of the study was twofold. It was to help the client locate the sign in the most optimal location for visibility.
Excuse me, could you speak more into the microphone?
Yes. The study that I prepared was twofold. It was for purposes of advising the client where to locate the sign, make sure that it's located in the optimal location to be seen for its purposes, advertising. The other aspect was to present testimony before this board in terms of the safety and traffic aspects of the sign as well. The sign is primarily located on, so it'll be visible from Morris Avenue. Morris Avenue is a local roadway, a municipal city roadway at that location. Speed limit is 25 miles per hour, and has one lane in each direction. We're at near traffic signals, traffic progression in the area is in the order of 25 miles per hour or less. The sign is important that the sign be located within what's called a cone of vision. The cone of vision is your vision that you see in both the vertical and the horizontal planes in front of you. And that cone of vision is measured at 20 degrees from your axis. That is your center gaze of your cone of vision. And in fact, you don't, within that cone of vision, you do not lose the perception of movement as well as lights.
This is while you're driving. This is while you're driving.
While you're driving. And as you're just sitting here too, if you take that 20 degree from your center of your axis and gaze at something in that cone, I can still see movement to my sides. If someone flickered a light or a tail light on red or something, I still get have a perception of what's going on. So in essence, where the sign is located, it's located within that cone of vision, your center cone of vision. You can acknowledge the sign, read the sign, but still have a focus on the traffic and the roadway in front of you. And that's the idea of installing these signs at locations that they typically are.
The question that I have, I mean,
Sure.
It's a business decision, and that's not something we can regulate. But when I drove down to see the banner that was hanging there the other day, I didn't see it until I got to Union Avenue because the tree was that side of the street shielded that from view.
Right.
So now I'm driving along, and let's say the light is not red, that's whatever visual it is for me. And all of a sudden, out of the corner of my eye, I see this sign. Is that not distracting?
That not distracting in the sense that if the demand is for you to keep your eyes on the road, you're not going to do that exactly. The sign is what we look at the sign as a sleeping giant. It doesn't demand any your attention or reaction.
The other comment, if I recall correctly, the testimony that we had last month from the young lady from Judy Dennis, who came up from Texas, indicated that the chain of these signs is, correct me if I'm wrong, I recall her saying 6 to 8 seconds.
Yeah, I think 8 to 10 seconds is what I have, but it can vary.
And it can be slowed down.
Yes, correct.
Because at the end of the last meeting, I said I was going to go out and look at signs. I've seen so many of them the last couple of weeks. One particular sign, the one around 17. First of all, I saw that sign. My wife saw that sign. I was driving, so I wasn't paying attention. But I said, keep an eye out. We saw that sign literally a mile before we got there. At least the brightness. I think that was very, very bright. But as I got closer, I tried to read what it said, and it went by so quickly that there was an FBI warning. We had indicated last time there was an FBI warning up there. I guess they couldn't sell any time, so they would give me some free time to the FBI. But it went by so quickly, I couldn't tell what it looked like. And if I was really interested in it, I would have to stop somewhere to take a look at it, which could be dangerous too. But most of the signs that I looked at are far higher than this one.
Correct.
And that's the concern that I have in the back, but we'll get to the concerns a little later.
Well, the height of the sign, the typical billboard that you see on the interstate or major highway, is right because it wants the contrast of the sky. It sticks out. If it's too low, it starts to blend in with buildings and trees and the topography. So if you bring it up high, it's that's not this type of sign. This sign's a lot different. It's in an inner area, inner city area. It's not on a major highway, and not one that you're going to see from a long distance. So again, studies have been performed by the New Jersey Turnpike Authority. Virginia Tech has done quite a bit of study on distractions to Virginia Tech University has done some documented studies as well to find out the safety aspects of distractions. And not only signs, but our cell phones and all the other, drinking coffee or reading the newspaper and everything else crazy people do. Right, shaking, put your eye makeup on it and so forth. But here we have a sign, and what they found, all the studies have found, is that there are no safety implications or hazards created by these signs. They are not a distraction. They may draw your attention as you feel that there's no risk or minimal risk in front of you, that you're comfortable seeing traffic in front of you and observing it, and then you may set your eye off to the distance. But again, keeping your peripheral vision on the road in front of you. So in that aspect, the sign is not a hazard. It's not a distraction. It meets your ordinance requirements where that billboards do not interfere with traffic safety devices or signs. Billboards should not obstruct the use of such signs or devices located within 250 feet. Certainly, as you see from the photograph, the measurements out in the field that we have taken, it's not going to distract or block any traffic control devices or signs in and around the area. So in that essence, it's properly designed and will not be a hazard.
Mr. Steiger, knowing that the sign can be regulated, as was testimony over the last month, not only for the duration of the advertising, but also for the brightness of it. Would that reinforce your opinion that it should not be an impact on safety issues?
It does. As brightness and or the change of the sign. It's not so much a safety issue, it's more of a planning issue. We hear from Mr. Leon about that. But certainly, I think if there's any touch of safety, if the message can be more static in the sense of not changing constantly, and having a blotter probably has a safety implication to it.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Commissioners, any questions, Mr. Steiger?
Mr. John Nankavai. I believe that Mr. Nankavai has testified here a number of times and
No, testified.
that's fine.
Recognize you as Mr. President.
You can't swear on record, you're saying at the same time. Raise your right hand. You solemnly swear the testimony you're giving will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth.
I do.
Name and address.
John, last name is Leon Cavallo, it's 388 Washington Road, Suite E, Sarah, New Jersey.
Mr. Nankavai, you were hired by our clients to study the application, which I presume you did.
Yes.
And you looked at the overall project, your opinion of impact as far as your opinion as far as the impact of it, and your take on the application and the sign with its planning issues and zoning issues.
Yes, I did look at it.
Will you please explain to the board, or please address the board with your opinion regarding the project?
I think, first of all, we're at a crossroads of many new uses that we've seen, in the past 5 or 7 years, I think that we haven't seen before. A couple of examples of that are adult daycare. 25 years ago, 35 years ago, you didn't have adult daycare because you didn't have the issues with seniors and some of the diseases that you have as you
Excuse me, you didn't have what? I didn't hear what you said. Didn't have what? 25 years ago?
Adult daycare.
Oh, all right, I couldn't hear that, I'm sorry.
I just wanted to give the board, is there are uses that we have looked at, that we haven't looked at in the past, that we've then introduced into the zoning ordinance or into the master plan for the zoning ordinance. I think we're at a crossroads now where the technology of the signage that we have for these digital electronic signs is such that they're more available, there's more technology available. As the lady from Texas said, and there's more interest from sign owners and advertisers to generate these newer signs, these new billboard signs. You can look at also solar panels that we have on, that's a big state project that are on almost all the utility poles. We've never had those before. I think we zoned for those really. And cameras is a good example since the 9/11 disaster. We have cameras now all over the place that we've never zoned for before. So I think what we have here is an issue where we have zoned the central commercial district. It has a lot of commercial uses. The area that we're looking at, Morris Avenue and Union and Westfield Avenue, which is Route 27, I believe. This use is compatible with all those uses, really. It fits in with many uses. It meets all the requirements of your conditional use, I believe, in my opinion, which we talked about. Mr. Steiger just talked about several. I believe at the last meeting, Mr. Benager mentioned that he believes, in his opinion, in my opinion also, that there's no intrusion on residential areas. There's no intrusion on places of assembly. With this location, there's no intrusion on scenic vistas. We don't have scenic vistas here at this particular location. It doesn't intrude with any traffic safety devices, as Mr. Steiger mentioned, and it doesn't obscure any business signs or anything given the location we have, which is perfect. And in my estimation, it's reasonably in harmony with the uses that are there. We're looking at a one-story building. It's surrounded by what I believe was an old dealership that went back to the 1920s, perhaps to the left, which is an old brick structure that's probably more than 60 feet high. And then there are a couple of other normal or standard billboards that are on the other side of Westfield Avenue, which are small in size, though. They're not the billboards that we have on the highways. And again, as Mr. Steiger mentioned, I think we're talking about apples and oranges when you look at this location and you look at a location on a federal or a larger state highway. This location is fairly benign. It really relates more almost to the pedestrian than it does to the auto, but the auto has to be taken into consideration, and a safety factor, you have to feel comfortable that there is a safety factor with where this billboard is positioned. I think Mr. Steiger presented that very eloquently, and it's not a problem in terms of safety and general welfare. I think, as or I believe, the conditional use can be granted here. The application will promote and enhance the character of the neighborhood. It will not be detrimental to the safety issue is clear and concise. The new construction of the digital billboard is more sensitive than other standard billboards. Those digital billboards can conveniently be changed. If you grant this application, for instance, I think at the last meeting we said the brightness issue could be controlled. The brightness is determined to be too bright. The brightness can be lowered. It fits into the area very nicely, as we said. You can't hear me? Okay. You want me to use the other mic? Okay. I'm used to the other mic. Yeah. So, let's see. As I said, the new construction of a digital billboard is more sensitive than a static or a normal industry billboard. The features of the billboard can be controlled, the brightness, the duration of the dynamic messaging, and it does have an impact on community benefits in terms of it can be utilized for Amber Alerts and for other community messaging throughout the life of the billboard. In addition to the second criteria of negative criteria, there is no substantial impact for the intent purpose of the zone plan, and that I feel that the impact from the billboard is minimal. It does not have a negative effect on the quality of the neighborhood. In fact, in many areas such as this, where you have a vibrant commercial district that's along Morris Avenue, this adds to the I believe the vitality and the synergy that you want to have in that kind of commercial corridor. So I think it adds to the picture and is an asset rather than distracting from the picture and becoming a liability. It promotes the theories of the master plan in terms of to provide a variety of commercial uses to serve the residences of the city. This will have an impact on the economic and commercial vitality of this area. It may not be a large impact, but it definitely is a positive impact. And as I mentioned before, the benefits, the public benefits are the board can be programmed for Amber Alert, police announcements, fire communication, public communications, and it is cost effective for local merchants, which is also important and generates additional commercial activity. The bottom line, if you accept that all the conditions are met, there are no variances for this application. It is a conditional use that meets all the conditions, therefore it's a permitted use. I'll leave your attorney wants to discuss that further. I will. The bottom line, to be quick about this, is if you approve the application, it will maintain the character as well as enhance the character of the corridor, the commercial corridor, by stimulating additional economic and commercial activity. It meets contemporary needs, and it's a positive aspect to the area. Do you want other billboards in this area at this time and place possibly? You may want to look at your ordinance and put some additional controls into that so that you do control that. It also will ensure traffic safety and protect the general welfare. So in all, I think it's a positive application, and I would respectfully ask that you approve the application as requested.
So, I show you two pictures. One that has been marked as A6 and A7. They're basically the same pictures, slightly different time frames. Looking at your knowledge of the Morris Avenue, which I know that you at one time worked for the city, so you're very much familiar with the avenue, Morris Avenue. When you look at the sign depicted in the picture, the sign that is in the picture, which is the same size as the projected one, in your opinion, does that detract from that area? I mean, you're also looking at the old building that you referred to as a dealership that was there. It's an old building that has some character, but it may detract in the area.
And I believe, in my opinion, there's in planning parlance, there's a term called sense of place. There's a sense of place here because of this commercial area. It's very vibrant. There are no empty storefronts here. Everybody is very vibrant. There are no empty storefronts here along Morris Avenue. This area, because of the alignment of the streets, almost acts as a conjunction area in terms of you could have street markets here maybe or something. And I think the billboard might play an interesting element in anything. Like if you close the street and have a street fair or something, it could be programmed to do many things dealing with the street fair, let's say. Whereas in other areas, you don't have the capability to do that. It is set back slightly on the roof. It's a one-story structure. It's a little higher than some of the other banner signs, but it's not much higher. There are a number of banner signs all along Morris Avenue, which are similar in presence. They're not similar in terms of they're not a billboard, but they are a sign. They're not as large as this, but this is a relatively small sign, and the surrounding structures, which are larger, especially the one we talked about before, makes the billboard, from a perception point of view, look a little smaller. So I think it fits into the area. It fits very well on the building. It's not obstructing any element in any of the conditions that are set up in the ordinance. And I think, in my opinion, it can be a non-intrusive billboard in this particular site and at this location, and can be a benefit to the community and a benefit for the merchants in the area.
One last question and one last comment maybe. You heard, I believe you heard Chairman Haas state that when they approached the area, the first thing that he saw, not the first thing, but what he saw really was not this sign. It was another sign which was further away. So when you look at the fact that as you're approaching this intersection from Morris Avenue going towards the railroad, if you don't see the sign, it would seem to me that it's not intrusive. Until you're able to get there, which is really what you want to achieve. Something that is neighborly, so to speak. And
something that is what?
Neighborly. That's the word. That fits in with the area.
Yeah, I think I agree. I think it fits in very well. It's as I said before, I think it almost more relates better to pedestrians than it does to vehicle drivers. But it has to be seen by vehicle drivers also to make it a safe situation. And with that cone and the cone vision that Mr. Steiger talked about. So I think it is a sign that's very unique, as was testified by the expert from the sign company. It's not a large sign. It's only 8 feet high by about 24 feet long. So it's a little over 200 square feet. It's not a very large sign. And it's not meant to be seen from a distance. And you can't, as I said before, you really can't compare this location to a location on the highway where you have a 625 square foot billboard.
Thank you, Mr. McCoy. Commissioners, are there questions for Mr. William involved?
I have some questions. With all due respect to the experts who testify and studies, I'm not convinced that it is not a safety issue, and I'm not convinced that it is not a hazard to drivers and pedestrians. When someone is focused on a sign that is changing, do you see a 10-year-old on a skateboard coming off the curb? Kids do crazy things, and that's a busy intersection. Years ago, cigarette companies would hire experts, and they would testify cigarettes are not harmful. So that doesn't mean anything to me. What is important to me is it right for that corner? Is it right for this city? There's nothing wrong with the billboard on top of the building. I see it's in proportion, and that's fine. But I have a problem with the LED. Just because it's a new technology, it doesn't mean it has to be everywhere. I don't think it's right for situations like this in the city. And you have this, and then a year from now, you're going to have 20 of them all over the place. Maybe I'm wrong, but that is my feeling. And we had a concern last time. It wasn't mentioned now, but as to the content of the advertising, what's it going to be? Are we going to see nightclubs and triple X this and that? Is that going to be under control for people seeing this?
We can, if I might address the last we are willing to put restrictions on the advertising.
Well, who's going to the owner? The owner is going to agree, but what if the advertising revenue isn't coming in? Take anything.
Well,
you got something there.
If it is restricted in the application, in the approval, or approve the application, my client's a family man. He's not looking to have, pornographic or other type of advertising, so we can agree to that. The other thing that I think that you need, and I believe you should consider, is that the city of Elizabeth does not have an ordinance in place to control this type of or this type of LED sign. Please let me finish.
Okay.
We, I believe, have given the city a wealth of information. We have been the guinea pigs of this project. And if you or the board or council does not want 50 of the signs in Morris Avenue, they can certainly act by ordinance. If you will put a restriction of how many feet from each one, that can be acted by ordinance. I don't want this application to hinge on a future that is under the control of the city by acting on an ordinance. We need to look at this application, where it is, how it is, and all of the steps that we have taken to try and make it a win-win for my client, obviously, for the merchants that are in the area, and really an education for the city for future impact, future curtailing, future look at what should be.
So this is really an experiment. We're being asked to approve something for which there are no regulations and no limitations yet. Are we putting the cart before the horse?
There are safety concerns that the board can certainly take into account. The issue about regulating content is one that raises constitutional issues.
In other words, it can't be controlled.
Commerce clause issues. Well, there are controls in the sense that any billboard cannot promote public obscenity. But at the same time, I know you have a billboard facing the northbound lanes of the turnpike that I believe has had advertisements for a gentleman's establishment, to coin the phrase, in New York. That's something that someone is allowed to place on a wall.
Yeah.
And you may not want to ever frequent that type of an establishment or type of facility, but you cannot unilaterally dictate content unless it is something that offends the morals of the community. I think is the rough standard that has been used by the United States Supreme Court. In terms of LED, you do have the right to address the issue of off-site impact, in the sense that it's no different than when the board looks at lighting of a proposed building, and we talk about having certain light shielding on fixtures to ensure that the lighting doesn't bleed off onto adjacent properties. There is one LED billboard that does face the northbound direction of the turnpike. It's about equidistant between exits 13 and 13A. Shortly after it was approved, there were concerns by neighbors in the evenings about the brightness and the impact from that sign, and the owner made the appropriate adjustments, put some shielding up along the bottom of the billboard that's there to address those concerns, because, again, it was a legitimate concern about off-site impact for surrounding homes. Because right around that particular billboard are residential homes in that section of the city. So those are legitimate in the sense that if the applicant is addressing content, that's the applicant voluntarily doing it. When in terms of brightness or in terms of frequency of the changing of the sign, if there's a concern about that being a safety issue, I think those are within the proper purview of the board to suggest as conditions, and then the approval to say we think the appropriate intervals of signage should be greater than 8 seconds. We think that's too quick a turnover in terms of posing a potential issue for pedestrians or for people driving vehicles in the area, and certainly it's the issue of brightness at nighttime, especially in later evening hours. Those are parameters that I don't think offend either the First Amendment or Commerce Clause, because they're content neutral. They're more directed toward issues with regard to safety rather than regulating content.
Who is responsible? I'm sorry, are you finished?
Yeah.
Who's responsible for putting together the restrictions or?
They would be conditions in a resolution if the board was to vote to approve. Just like we write other conditions into other resolutions and say you can't convert a garage into a two-family house, we approve it into a third unit, or convert the family room into a third unit. And that way then city code enforcement has that information available to them, so if it's brought to their attention that the condition of the resolution is not being is not being followed, then it can be dealt with by code enforcement. What I would also recommend, and I've had this discussion with the board chair, Mr. Benegger, is that the board, separate and apart from making the decision on this application, authorize Mr. Benegger and myself to prepare a new ordinance for consideration of the city council that can address these concerns, so it sets objective standards, so that in the future anyone else coming in will understand that if they're going to do this type of display billboard with LED, that the board is going to want to address, as part of that review, the impact of the brilliance of the lighting, the impact on surrounding residential areas, and traffic and pedestrian safety concerns. So that way, at each level, there's criteria that are there, so any future applicant is on notice and saying, okay, I understand the city's concerns, the legitimate concerns, I'll address them in my application.
I understand. This city, we are living in 2000. I'm sorry. We are living in 2012, and progress is being made. We don't want the city to look like Las Vegas, and so, with restrictions on with restrictions on the application as to how we can protect the city while they're able to do business, I think would be the way to go.
Can I comment on both of your comments? As I said last month, Mr. Lugo is the first. And there will be, if we, and he will not be the last, obviously we will put resolutions. We will put, if there's a resolution put forward, it will contain some conditions as to the brightness of the sign at night, how long it will be on at night, how often it can change within a period of time. It will not be 8 seconds. I've seen the sign on the road 8 seconds. It drove me crazy. The bottom line is, there is no ordinance. We definitely are going to ask Victor and Pat to get together and draw up an ordinance so that in the future there will be some regulations. What I would propose, and I've discussed this with Mr. Sanchez. See, I remember that guy from 6 years ago. Mr. Sanchez. And I think what we're going to do is kind of put some tough restrictions to start with and then review them in a month or 2 months and see where they are and whether they need to be tweaked. And that'll help us with resolutions and be going up to, it's new to all. I mean, these 100-foot signs up there are probably cranked up at night. Have you seen them on the road? Some of them are cranked up so much like Miss Dennis said last month, you can't read them because it's so bright. And this one is 10 feet above the ground, so we're hoping that we can read it at 5% or 10%.
We're certainly, as I've stated to you many times, we are certainly willing and able and ready to work with the city, as we have been working since the beginning of this application, to make this a win-win situation. My client has no objection to a look-back period, for lack of a better term, if work with Victor, work with the applicable officials, that will surely happen. You have some comments?
Jim, I have 2 questions. One of the witness and our attorney. You said that there's going to be no substantial safety risk.
Sorry.
You said that there's going to be no substantial safety risk to the community. No safety risk to the community. He stated. Also, there's no negative impact in the neighborhood. Do you feel, in your expert opinion, after reviewing this, that possibly a smaller sign, not one that is 203 square feet, 8 by 24, or something a little bit smaller, then that would have the same positive impact on the community and that neighborhood? Do you feel that something like that would be possible? A smaller sign, a slightly smaller sign than something of that size? Because you said it would not have a negative impact, and we put maybe a restriction on that. That's going to be my second question to our attorney.
It does fit within your ordinance, though, because it's under 300 square feet. Current ordinance. So it fits with what we have right now to work with. Sure, you could make it smaller. I don't know. I think it'd be about the same. This is not a big sign. 200 square feet seems to be a moderate size. It can be working. 8 feet before 100 square feet. I don't know if you could locate it and if it would make Mr. Steiger's calculations on the location, because the ultimate thing here, it has to be readable, but legible.
But if the review is something slightly smaller, not going 203 square feet, but a little smaller than that, is that a possibility? Have you had the same positive impact?
I have to defer to maybe Mr. Steiger. I'm not an expert on the vision, how it is, the legibility of the sign from a driving standpoint.
My question to you, Pat, could some restriction be put in on the size of this, even though it meets what we have right now? If smaller?
If the applicant would have to agree with voluntarily, because if the sign already meets the ordinance requirements, you can't mandate you put in something smaller. one of the things I would recommend if we're going to write a new ordinance is we create something that would be akin to the sliding scale. In other words, a smaller building, lower height, smaller sign. 5-story building can accommodate a bigger sign than a 1-story. So again, you're proportioning the impact of the size of the sign to the size of the building and surrounding uses. Our current ordinance doesn't do that, whether it's an LED billboard or an old-fashioned sheet billboard. That's something we would have to address in revising the ordinance. But if the ordinance meets the signage size, you can't mandate to put a smaller one in. And one thing I'll remind the board again, as part of this, you have an ordinance that has 6 different parts of the conditional use. If it meets all 6, as they testified they believe it does, then it's approvable. If you find they don't meet one of those 6, you're not voting then to deny. You're voting in effect then to say if you want to pursue this, then you're going to have to take it to the zoning board of adjustment, because what the municipal land use law requires is that when you have the conditions in a conditional use ordinance, if one of those conditions is not met, then at that point the board makes that finding, but then that gives them the right to go to the zoning board and ask for the equivalent of a D variance because they're not meeting a condition of conditional use. So they do have that alternative remedy.
One of the advantages of being first, and some of the disadvantages of being first. We're all pioneers in this. As I said last month, this is uncharted territory. Mr. Chalmers, when the first car drove down the streets in the city of Elizabeth,
It was 1903.
Okay, my city historian. When the first car drove down the streets of the city of Elizabeth, they probably wanted to put an ordinance out against them too. So the bottom line is we are in the 21st century.
Not me.
Signs are a fact of life. This first sign is coming in with no regulations in the city ordinances that included. Mr. Lugo has been kind enough to agree to some conditions if we approve this thing. And I think that we then have to get this ordinance up and in place. We will not look like Times Square over my deadline.
It's a foolish question. Is there any reason why all this can't wait until the proper ordinance is in place?
No, you can't wait because a couple of years ago, Governor Christie signed what became known as the time of application law. In most states, New Jersey was an exception. You could file an application and the city could change the ordinance and force you to go to the zoning board. The law that was signed in 2010 became effective May 5 of 2011. Says that the application must be governed by the ordinance on the books as of the day the application is filed. So even if we were to say, guess what, don't come back in 2 months and hustle through a new ordinance, can't do that anymore.
Okay.
You can't close the door.
Yeah.
You can close the door after the horse is out of the barn, but in this case, one horse was taken.
No, I just had that question. I was wondering.
We've heard all the testimony. Do you have any more questions regarding this? Is there anyone in the audience who has any comments or concerns regarding this application? If so, please come forward. Seeing none, say a few words, or I'm going to go for a motion.
Well, I just want the commissioners to know that while we are in the 21st century and advantages and improvements technologically and otherwise exist, this technological advancement is not going to turn Morris Avenue into Las Vegas. It's not going to be flashing signs. This is a business-related LED signs that can be very dim, very bright, and the right dimming at different times is critical for my client as well as for the city. And we're willing to work with the city to make it right for the city. So it can be a win-win situation for my client, the business community in Morris Avenue, guide the city into making the decisions for future similar developments which are sure to come. I think We have worked very hard, my clients worked very hard to try and educate everyone, including me, okay, into really coming up with something that the city can be proud of, and my clients can be proud of, but at the same time be financially beneficial. Thank you.
Now that you've heard Mr. Sanchez here, remember that time. Can I have a motion?
I will make a motion to approve the application with the however, you know how I'm wording it, with the additions to the ordinance, to make an ordinance.
Well, that's separate. Can I have a second of that motion? Seconded by Secretary Urban. And I'm going to state some of those conditions that I think should be added into this. I think that during the day, brightness doesn't affect much unless it's a dark and cloudy day. But I think that we start at 95%. We turn it off at midnight. I drove after the last hearing, I drove up Morris Avenue at 9:30 in the evening. We're a little later at night. There wasn't a soul on the street. So save your electricity. Turn off at midnight. We'll start at midnight. And then if we see a need for it, we can go. Mr. Sanchez, you and I talked about this. I'm going to start tough because if I give you 5 fingers, you'll want an arm. If I give you 1 finger, you have 4 more fingers to get. And then the time on the fade or the switching, somewhere between 45 seconds and a minute. Again, also after a period of time to be agreed upon, Mr. Benaber will come out with his staff, take a look at it, and we'll give Mr. Benaber the power to make the adjustments without having to have him come back before this board.
Just 30 seconds.
We'll start with 45. I've watched different signs, and I've sat there and I've timed them. The ones that are, again, if somebody happens to get there at 44 seconds and it changes, they see a sign change. But I've seen signs change in 8 seconds while I'm driving, and that's totally insane. And I've seen signs, there's a sign on the southbound side of the New Jersey Turnpike on the Western Spur, just past the toll booth, before you get to Xanadu or whatever they call it, the American Nightmare. And the bottom line is that sign sat for 1 minute. I sat there and watched it. That's fine. Most people will see the sign. The people walking in the neighborhood will see the sign change. I don't know how many different ads you'll have, but we'll sit with you and we'll discuss it. We'll sit with you and discuss it, and we'll modify it. But this is where we're going to start. Okay, if you'll agree to that, I'll add those conditions to it.
Mr. Chairman, I have one more question. Last time, the woman from Texas indicated the sign would be controlled by computer-type program. Well, my question is, who controls the computer? That's under your control.
Mr. Lugo controls the computer, but if he agrees to this, he's got to abide by it. And he will. He understands that he's first. He understands he's coming under the ordinance and that we can't control the size of the sign. So he's gotten us on that one. He's willing to agree. He's willing to agree to do this. He's the pioneer. He's going to be the trailblazer. From now on, they're going to hold aside to Lugo signs. Vic, anything else you want to add?
I just want to tell the board that we do have a pretty good ordinance. It's probably one of the better ones around. The existing ordinance for billboards. It's just that this application applies this condition in there that it can't be seen within 600 feet of a residential zone. Very few areas in Elizabeth are used 600 feet from a residential zone. It just happens that this area is surrounded by C3, C2 zones. So the reason we haven't seen a lot of billboards in all the years, it's very difficult to get a site to work within our ordinance. The ordinance doesn't need a lot of work for the LEDs, it just needs to be tweaked a little bit. And the biggest tweaking, I think, in the future will be separation of billboards. Billboards cannot be within another 300 feet of another billboard. maybe in areas that it can receive 600 feet from a residential zone. It just so happens that this application applies to other conditions. That's why I'm very surprised the board has seen in 10 years.
And before we finish, please let me just add this. As part of this planning board for the last 18 years, and working with the other commissioners, we take our job with planning the city very seriously. And we've had a lot of debate. We talked about how we feel about the city and how we want our city to look. And so for you to do business and for you to represent him, and we respect your ability to do business. The labor of love that has gone into seeing that the city is laid out properly is our responsibility. And we're very, very, very serious about it. And that's why this is taking so long, because it is a precedent. You know, you are going into uncharted waters, and what you do, the city will follow. And just to let you know, we took this very, very seriously. Can we have a roll call?
Commissioner Gonzalez? Aye. Commissioner Brown? Aye. Secretary Irvin? Aye. Commissioner Shelton?
I still have serious reservations, but I do live in the 21st century. I even have a color TV. So I vote aye.
Aye.
Chairman Hunt?
Aye. Mr. Lugo, we look forward to working with you and making sure this works. I'm sorry.